Hello and welcome to another live stream where we are going to be talking about AI writing and how to actually practically write with AI. So in last week's live stream, we went through and all of this brainstorming material, we kind of cemented this, made sure it was all exactly what we wanted. And then we wrote this very lengthy outline. This whole thing was about 3,600 words, as you can see. Well, I guess you can't. Right, if I move myself here, maybe you can see it. Says that it's 36, 38 words there. But anyway, today we're going to actually be writing this thing. So this 3,500 word outline, we're going to get started working on it. It's just see how far we go. I don't know if we'll make it very far because we also have to set up everything inside of Sudowrite to make it work. We are going to be using Sudowrite for this because, again, I'm trying to show people how I'm actually practically using these tools today. Not necessarily like what is the best or the easiest, just what I am personally doing. Okay. So right now I'm using Sudowrite a lot for its Muse model. I don't really use it for much else. As you saw last week, I did not use it at all for all of the brainstorming and things that we were doing and the outlining. We did that mostly inside of Claude projects in Claude Pro. So we'll just see how it goes. And using Sudowrite just for the pros. But first, before we do that, we have to kind of import a few things into Sudowrite. So we've got, like I said, we've got this whole brainstorming stuff here. We've got this outline. We probably need to create a few other things just so Sudowrite has them in its context. But with that stuff we can actually do in Sudowrite probably. So let's go ahead and start we'll just copy everything in this brainstorming document that I've got here in Atticus. We're going to go into our story Bible. So I've set up a project here. It's just called Ruins of the Abyss. There's nothing in it yet. This is inside of Sudowrite. And actually, just because I really hate the sorbet color scheme, we're going to change it to my favorite, which is Aurora Borealis. It's kind of a nice greenish, bluish, dark mode. So yeah, I like this one. So we're going to go down to the brain dump, and we're just going to dump everything from that thing in here. And then before we go any further, we're going to also go to the outline and start putting in these chapters into Sudowrite. So just to make this easier, I'm going to pull Atticus over to another screen so I can just go back and forth. And outline, we're going to say chapter 1, enter in all of our information there. Add chapter. Let's see, we got, I think, 10 chapters. So let me just make sure these are all added. Yeah, Hannah, I totally agree. That's why I titled this video, What Writing with AI Actually Looks Like, to hopefully show some people that it's not quite what they think. Now, it isn't the same as writing traditionally. That's the haters are absolutely correct in saying that. It is not the same thing. Just like photography is not the same thing as painting a portrait. But it is still an art form and requires quite a bit of a creative brain on the part of the human, as we will see. So just finish copying over all of the chapters here. I'm thankful that it seems that, because there's some pretty hefty word count for these chapters, especially this one. Let's see if it can handle this whole thing. Yep. So I don't think, I mean, I'm sure there is a word limit for these chapter summaries, but doesn't seem to be small enough that you're likely to hit it. I'm sure there is something, but it's probably a real big extreme. So how long are my streams normally? About an hour and a half is usually what I go to. If I'm pressed for time, I'll make it more like an hour. Yeah. So just so everyone knows, I'm not going to be spending too much time answering questions while I'm writing. Feel free to put your questions in the comments. If you do put a super chat, I will prioritize those. But hopefully if there's time at the end, I will try to answer some of your questions. But right now I just kind of going back and forth between the chat and the creative endeavor here is difficult for my brain. I hope that makes sense. So we're just going to dive into the writing. I'm not going to get too much into the questions. I'll answer a few right now though, since we're here and I'm talking about it. Why do you still consider it writing? Well, because writing is not just one process. It is not the mechanical act of typing words onto a keyboard. It is creating a narrative and shaping it. And I've done a whole lot of things. I have written things traditionally. I still do because I have short stories and stuff that I write. I also do deliberate practice exercises, and I write those myself because that's the best way to learn. But I've also written with AI, and I've also worked with ghostwriters. In every case, even with the ghostwriters, there is an element of writing that happens. Now, with the ghostwriters, it's a co-writing thing. They are also writing. They're doing a significant portion of the writing. But me with the outlining, the planning, and the editing, that's also writing, right? So it's all part of writing. Writing is a multi-step process. And so using AI to actually be the mechanism for getting the words on the page is in my mind, no less writing than using a typewriter to get your words on the page or using a pencil to get your words on the page. They're all different ways of getting the words on the page that just use different mechanisms, different mechanics. AI just happens to be faster, but the end result is going to be very similar because it's still my story, right? Do you know if Sudowrite knows how to write in other languages other than English? So if you use the other models, those models are capable of writing in most languages, but the Muse model specifically is only trained for English. That's because it's been custom designed for creative writing in English. If they wanted to do Spanish or German or whatever, they would have to create a specific model for that language. It's not an all-around model like others are, if that makes sense. I've only used Novelcrafter. Is Sudowrite similar or better or worse in any way in your opinion? So I hate this question. Okay, right now I'm actually really struggling with the question of which is better, Novelcrafter or Sudowrite. I think it comes down to preference and workflow. They have very different workflows. I do think that the Muse model is the superior model for prose specifically. And that's why I use Sudowrite. If it weren't for that model, though, I would probably still be using Novelcrafter because I like the workflow better and I like the pricing system better. But that's just me. Sudowrite does kind of try to make things simpler and easier for like someone who doesn't understand AI very well. So, if I write a scene then have the AI rewrite it, does that count as writing with AI? I would say so. But I mean, there's so many different ways. It's all a big muddy gray mess right now. In terms of like legal definitions, I don't know. Because the Copyright Office has made some clarifications on what constitutes AI writing. And I think they would probably say, if you wrote it and you just used AI to improve upon it, then you can claim the copyright for that. So in terms of that kind of a definition, yes. In terms of, I don't know, like, certainly I would consider it writing because you did writing, right? And again, writing is not one thing. It is a multi-step process. If you are guiding the story, if you are creating a product that matches your vision, I don't think it matters how you got those words on the page. Because no matter how you do it, it's going to be a very similar product at the end. Right? All right. While I disagree with using AI to generate prose, I'm still trying to be open-minded and understand. I use ChatGPT and Claude to analyze and tell me what I'm missing, but I won't use it for prose. That's fine. You don't have to. I do not. This will be the last question that I answer, and then we're going to actually get into the writing here. I do not judge people on how they choose to write. I likewise ask people not to judge others on how they choose to write, even if it's in a way you disagree with. Because people have all kinds of different circumstances. For me, I got into AI because I hit a period of really bad burnout, and it was next to impossible for me to sit down and write. And AI was just a little oomph that I needed to get out of that, and now I write all the time, even without AI. And there are a lot of people in other situations that I don't want to judge them. You can use them however you want. And like I said, writing is a multi-step process. Chances are there is a part of that process that you don't like or that AI can do much better. In that case, I would suggest using AI for that. If you get a lot of personal fulfillment from the actual typing out the words process, then I am not going to stop you. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. Do what you love. The point of AI is to help you do the things you don't care for as much, which gives you more time and brain space for the things you do care about more. Okay, I say this all the time. And that's why I do use it for prose, because prose is my least favorite part of writing. And I do get some people that say, well, you're not a writer then. I disagree. But to each their own, right? Writing for me is a multi-step process. And if I'm involved in the outlining, which is my favorite part, I love outlining. I don't use AI for outlining. Well, I do. These days I do. But only because it can save me time. And certainly the initial brainstorming and stuff like that, I just love that process. I get so much creative fulfillment from it. And then I also do editing at the end after the AI has written the thing. So for me, it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, the end result is the same, whether I used AI or not. And AI is only getting better and better, so it will get to the point where it is a better writer than most writers. And perhaps even a better writer than the best writers. At which point, we're going to be asking ourselves some big philosophical questions. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. So I put everything into the brain dump. We're going to add our genre. This will be cosmic horror mixed with Vikings. Style. I'm not going to put a style in here because we're going to tweak that as we go. Sometimes I find using the Muse model, if I have style information, it actually makes it worse. So sometimes it's better to just trust Muse. And then for the synopsis, I don't have a synopsis. I just have the outline. But we should probably have a more succinct synopsis. So I'm going to let it generate the synopsis based on everything I've put in. I think this is looking at the brain dump. And I'm just going to read through this really quickly to make sure it is accurate. You know what? Probably a more accurate way to do this. Again, this isn't a reason why I don't use Sudowrite all the time. It's because this is not looking at the outline that I gave it. It's looking at the brain dump. So there are details that it's missing. So we're going to go to Claude. And I'm just going to say, summarize this outline into a story synopsis. And because I don't want it to be a book description where it's like trying to sell the book, I wanted to give the whole thing. Make sure to summarize the entire thing, even the ending. And then I'll just paste in the outline here and get my synopsis. So Samuel says, I'm in the beginning of world building for a story's world. Would you recommend I use AI for that part of the process? If you want to. Again, I make no recommendations or prescriptions. It's whatever works for you. This is a bit of a long synopsis. I might not be able to make this work because I think there's an 800 word limit. Oh no, that was only 558 words. So we're good. That seemed like a lot more words. All right. So now we have a synopsis, and this is based on the outline, so it should be good. All right, now we're going to add characters, and I already have some character. Well, let's see if we can get it to generate the characters, and if it does a good job. If not, I will replace some of the information for these characters. To me, it seems like it would make a person. So so this is talking about writing prose, that it would make a person an author, not a writer. But I will keep watching this live in your videos to see if my mind could be changed. First of all, let me say I'm not trying to change your mind. I also like. It's interesting that you say it's an author, not a writer, because that is a very close distinction. And honestly, I would say it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you're an author, not a writer. It's like saying that a director of a movie is less valid than the screenwriter in the creative process of making a movie. It's a collaborative process, and working with AI is also a collaborative process. That's why it's different than just writing. It's a totally different new art form. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. I still consider it writing because ultimately the end result is the same. But if you want to think of it as something slightly different, that's fine. But the only thing I care about are the haters that say that it is not creative, that it is not art. Because to me, that's like saying that the film director is not a valid creative position because he has the screenwriter and the art director and the production designer and the cinematographer and all of these other people that he relies on. He or she, I should say. All right. So we got Ragnar Lothbrok, Viking leader, groups. Let's see. A natural leader who commands respect through both strength and wisdom. His sharp mind and keen instincts serve him well in both battle and diplomacy. I am concerned about some of these things sounding AI-ish, because sometimes when these the information for the characters here has like AI-isms in it, it actually bleeds into the prose. But we'll see if Muse does that. Legendary vector, earning respect and renown. I mean, this is all accurate. I worry about how it's phrased, but we'll see. We'll give it a try. I could also go to Claude and just ask it to give me these fields as well if we were really interested in that. Let's see. Physical description and dialogue style are probably the most important here. Long, unruly dark hair and battle-weathered. Unruly, we'll say just brown hair. Battle-weathered beard. See, that's the sort of thing we don't need. Just beard. Frame intense eyes that miss little. Bears the marks and scars of his many battles with pride, his bearing that of a seasoned warrior. His commanding stature is enhanced by traditional Viking armor and weapons worn with the ease of one who has spent a lifetime in battle. Yeah, see, a lot of that just... I hope that doesn't cut... We're going to watch this. We may have to come in and change some of this. Speaks with the authority of a natural leader. His words carrying weight and purpose can shift from battlefield commands to thoughtful counsel as needed. His speech patterns reflect both his warrior background and his strategic mind, often direct and decisive, but capable of diplomatic nuance when required. Favors clear, powerful statements that inspire loyalty and confidence in his followers. Okay, so that's fine for now, but we'll see if it makes things too AI-ish. Towering figure, broad shoulders, battle-hardened muscles. Thornbjorn cuts an imposing silhouette even among his fellow Vikings. His stern fate bears the scars of multiple battles, yet his eyes carry a gentle wisdom that softens his otherwise intimidating appearance. I need to talk to the guys at Sudowrite because I'm sure there are better prompts and models for what this is. Because I could think of a much better way of describing someone physically that the AI would be useful for the AI. This is why I prefer Novel Crafter for most things, is because you don't have to conform to their prompts. Now, technically, I don't have to in Sudowrite either, because I can just go to Claude and get that information there and then just copy and paste it in here. But if I'm using their prompt that generated the character, which a lot of people are going to be doing, I think it could use improvement, and there's no way to change it. No way to change the prompt they're using. So I don't like that. But I understand why they do it for simplicity's sake. Speaks with careful consideration, his deep voice carrying a weight of experience. He favors direct but diplomatic language, often serving as a bridge between opposing viewpoints. Let me see. I have some information about him here. All right, Elide, striking in appearance. Elide is part of the Order of Maiden Glory. Actually, we're just going to call this guy Sten, and his other name will be the Seer. Hey, the Fairy Queen. I'm just really scanning through this quickly. I want to get through it a little bit faster than if I were to read it out loud. When people get a good glimpse of her, she looks like a young woman with short brown hair. Let's see, around 25 or so, with short brown hair and a thin yet toned body. Her words are soft and gentle, yet defined and forceful, but not forceful, and commanding. For those who don't know, this Fairy Queen character is in my Fairy Queen series. Surprise, surprise. But it's not actually the same Fairy Queen as who the Fairy Queen is at the start of that series. So this is a character I know very, very well. So we'll see cultists. Of unfamiliar, almost organic design. As if it was made from a strange form of wood that is stronger than steel, and which was not shaped or forged, but grew in the shapes that they are in. Speak rarely any measured tones. Yeah, sure. All right, now I think it's making things up. This character is not in my thing. It's also interesting. I'm curious to know if it's because these are it's identifying a group here. Okay, well, I'll just leave that for now. All right, now we're gonna generate some settings. Okay, looks like it doesn't have the same we're just gonna create one. A mysterious island somewhere that emerges somewhere in the North Sea between Denmark and France, close to England / Scotland. It is covered in nothing but mud and a mysterious standing stone at the top of a hill in the center of the island. The mud is often slippery. The island appears completely barren, with nothing but brown mud, seaweed, and dead fish strewn about. So now that I've given it that, I'm gonna hit go. This is probably the only thing that we really need to input into the world building for now, because everything else I will just provide it in the moment when it is needed. Um, this is nice. It gave me some other senses that I didn't think of. Yeah, sure. We'll run with that. If we run into the AI doing anything weird, we might come back here and modify some of this stuff to just make it a little bit more simple, I guess. So, all right. Thank you guys. I got him. He's been moved out, I think. First of all, I just want to thank you, Alan Anomaly, for even though that you disagree with some of the things I'm saying, for being very reasonable and kind about it, and just civil. We try to be civil here. So, and everyone else, please also be civil in your conversation. Otherwise, I will remove you from the chat. All right. Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry for that distraction. Let's get into actually writing this thing. So there are a couple of ways you can write with Muse. First of all, we want to connect this to make sure it's connected to our chapter 1. So now it's connected to chapter 1. We can go to the chapter generator, and it'll have the description of chapter 1 pulled in automatically here. And I could have it generate beats from that, or I could just have it generate the whole chapter from this. I have found that Muse, while it's better than past options, is not it is not as good as other use cases when doing the whole thing at once. I'm sure they'll fix that and make it better in the future, but for right now, I don't do the whole chapter at once. I don't even like to do the whole chapter at once, even if I could, because I like to have fine-tuned control over where the narrative's going in the moment. I just find that it feels more like a writing flow for me. Like when I'm actually writing, and you get into that flow state, it's a wonderful place to be. And you feel like you're in the story, seeing it come alive before you. I do not get that when I'm doing the whole chapter at once. And but I do get it if I do it this other way I'm going to show you in a second. So, and also I find that doing the whole chapter at once feels risky to me, because if I get 25% of the way through editing the chapter and I find that it goes off the rails or it got something wrong, I'm then going to have to do much more serious editing from then on out. And it just actually causes me to spend more time on the editing process. So I currently, in its current state, do not recommend the chapter generator. So I'm going to close this. Instead, we're going to go to using the guided write feature, and we'll start by making sure the settings are correct. So in the settings, yeah, usually creativity is better over here. If you're finding that it's being a little bit too colorful, adding too many AIism, well, and not the, like too many metaphors and things, or if it's going off the rails and not following your instructions too well, you can move this down a bit. But I found that it's fine where it is right now most of the time. And number of cards, if you want to keep your costs down as much as possible, I would just go with 1 card. Usually I'm okay with 1 card. If I'm not okay with it, I'll just generate it again, rather than having 2 or 3 cards where it generates it every time. Usually 1 is okay with me. And then the length of the cards, I found 250 words is the sweet spot. Sometimes I will go up to 500 words. But I find the results at 250 words to be pretty good. And then of course we want to make sure that the Muse model is selected here. Key details, you don't really need to put anything in key details. I'll even turn this off because we have everything in the characters and world building. So yeah, so those are our settings. And so the one you want here is guided write, where we're going to tell it what happens next. I could just go here and copy sections from the outline and just put it in here, but I find for my own personal workflow, I don't like that as much. So I end up writing these as I go, but they're usually really brief and short. And it does have access, because we've linked our chapter 1 here to the chapter 1 in the outline. It does know where the overall story is going to go. So that helps. So with that in mind, I've got my outline pulled up in a separate browser here, or a separate screen here that you can't see. But I've just got it here so I can see it and easily know how it starts. I am going to write the first line or two myself, because I find that using Muse in the guided write section needs something to go on. And so just giving it just a little, like even just a sentence, helps it to sort of get started. I've found that when I just try to get it to start writing with nothing to go on but the prompt, it often kind of like looks weird. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it's not as precise as it is later if I give it stuff to go on. So we're going to give it an opening sentence. Now, of course, the opening sentence is always the hardest. So I am more than likely going to change this. Okay. Got to get in creative mode here. And apologies if I don't talk as much over these next few minutes, because I'm going to be kind of entering a flow state here. At least hopefully. Something about this storm was wrong. Ragnar stood at the bow of his ship, gazing at the swirling dark clouds that seemed to have a life of their own. Was Thor. Yeah. Thor was angry, but why? He had just done the impossible. Conquered Paris. But now there was something in the air. Something that prickled his skin. We'll start with that. So now we'll go to guided write, and I'll put in the first little bit. And again, I'm going to kind of estimate roughly how much 250 words should be, or what amount of story is going to happen in 250 words. And this is only going to take a sentence or two for me to instruct. So let's see. Thornbjorn comes up to him and tells him that the men are restless. They think the gods are angry. And admits even he feels like something is off. All right, we'll let it go. Did not format that very well. All right. Approaching the gathering gloom. We don't need gathering. Its broad silhouette steady against the uncertain ground. See, this is a little bit AI-ish. I'm concerned that it's getting that because of the characters in the world building. Against the uneven deck. Okay, so it's just made up some stuff. Because they haven't even come. Yeah. Let's go quickly to the characters here. I want to change some of this stuff. We're just going to put in something a little simpler. Because I already have some things here. I'm going to just delete all this. And just call this description. And I'm just going to put in this. Legendary Viking leader known for his commanding figure in his mid-40s with a robust build and striking blue eyes. Motivated by his desire to protect his people and control his destiny, he's haunted by the fear of losing control and unknown threats represented by the Lovecraftian entity. Actually, we can get rid of that. He's a Myers-Briggs type. Ragnar's sentences are often direct, concise, and purposeful. His words carry a natural rhythm of command, providing an impression of strength and certainty. He often uses active voice. There's a captivating cadence to his speech that draws in his listeners. So I think that's sufficient. So we're gonna go ahead and delete all of these as well for Thornbjorn. Rename. Description. I'm just gonna put what I've got in my brainstorming. Elite, I'll leave for now because I don't have a description of her, but for Sten, we're going to change his a little bit. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to just edit this. It'll need a little bit more here. remained on the mountainous waves, too large for the sea. They traveled through. Wait, what's the name of the sea between Great Britain and mainland Europe? Okay, the North Sea. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Too large for the North Sea. Do they fear the water more than their own leader? He replied, challenge beneath the stone. Thornton paused, his eyes scanning the restless shadows. Even I feel it, old friend. Okay, actually, we're gonna start this bit over. Tells him that the men think the gods are angry. Thornbird admits that even he feels like something is off. And in brackets here, I'm going to say, keep in mind, they have not spotted the island yet. They are just in the North Sea during the storm. There we go. Thornburn's eyes narrowed, studying the turning sides. I trust you, Ragnar, but even I feel that this storm is different. Ragnar turned, noting the gravity, and was usually unwavering expression. I don't like gravity. The shadow in decks were slick beneath their feet, but he held his balance like a seaborn creature. You faced storms before, Ragnar said. Is this one so fearsome? Oh, and you know, the other thing I need to make sure we have here, I will put this in the style section. Third person limited, past tense, from Ragnar's perspective. Forgot to put that in there. It kind of got it right, more or less. So secretly, he could not help but feel the same. It's more than a storm. The air is wrong. There's something ancient bided just beyond their sight. Like a war between gods, or something worse. Got back to his feet. The men None of my men would ever break under a few waves. And smiled. And what do you say? Oh, wait, we got the smile there. Ragnar was keen enough to see the unease that still tightened. Okay. This is good. I see the debates going on in the chats. Please, again, keep it civil. But Al-Anomaly, trust me, I'll have some reassuring words, I hope, for you later. All right. So we've got 400 words. That took a little longer than I thought, but it should start to go a little faster. I think the prose is better since we changed those bits about the characters. So let's go on to the next beat. And the next beat is when they find the island. Pull up my outline. In the distance, they see land. I have to like copy and paste Thorbjorn's name because I don't have because of the little symbol then in there. I do, but remarks that they shouldn't be land here. Ragnar says that perhaps the storm blew them off course. It is hard to see with the star. It is hard, we'll say, impossible to know for sure with the skies covered. I'm gonna run that again. There we go. It was continuing off from the wrong moment. All right, there we go. Against the hulls. Ragnar narrows his eyes, scanning the murky horizon there. Land. Right beside him, wiping salt from his beard. See, that's the kind of detail that I probably wouldn't get myself. I've always not been the greatest at descriptions. But it just fits perfectly with the scene. The men stopped their rowing. The gods. Where have the gods taken us? All right, that's an issue with the world building here, so I want to make sure we get rid of that. Do I have a description of this thing? Not really. Probably should have come up with better descriptions. That's okay. We'll run with it for now. Unless I feel like it needs more guidance. Where are the gods taking us? Exclaimed one warrior. Are you certain? I've known you for a long time, Ragnar. I know when something is off. Doing his best not to let the doubt show. Likely unsuccessfully. See, it's like naming the isle. Because it's sort of even though there isn't a name for it yet. The mysterious island. All right, now next little bit. Describe the island itself. This is the first time Ragnar and his men have encountered it. They beach their boats. They have to pull their boats well out of the water because of how slippery the mud is and the fact that there's nothing to tie their boats to. Vicious mud, the coldness of it seeped through his boots, and he could feel it creeping up his legs like a living thing. Trudged forward and sucked at each step with squelch fury. With a squelch. You don't need squelching fury. The air was thick with the stench of rot. Seaweed and dead fish washed up and left to waste. The other ships came fast behind, warriors hesitating as they surveyed the shore. Still has a fair amount of like adjectives and stuff. I might play around with the creativity settings. Stretched out before them a wasteland of shifting gray. Empty but for scattered heaps of sea refuse and what looked like carcasses of beasts not quite of any world they knew. No, we don't need that. All the ships onto land. Ragnar landed behind him with a grunt. His massive form half vanished into the mud. We'll just say not his whole form, but his massive legs half vanished into the mud. His face held grim determination. No. We'll just say stiffened. He waded to solid footing. No rock nor tree, nothing to tie off to, he observed. He said. Said and asked are the two dialogue tags that you need the most. It's actually a sign of bad writing to have too many alternate dialogue tags. Like some are okay, like shouted, but I use whispered fairly frequently, but Ragnar now we pulled him high, he said, well beyond the water's reach. I actually kind of like that. The longboat skidded perilously on the muddy slope as if drawn by some unseen force back toward the hostile waves. Push. Okay, yeah, that's good. We need to introduce Sten at some point. Is that in the outline here? Let's see. No, it is not in the first chapter. So that is an oversight for the outline. So we definitely need to introduce. This is why I like doing it one bit at a time. If I generated the whole chapter at once, it would not have put the seer in there. And now, like, since I'm doing this as we go, I can say, oh, we need to insert this in here. So let's go to the next bit. Once the boats are firmly removed from the water, Ragnar and Thornbjorn meet up with Sten. The groups. We'll say Ragnar's personal seer. He asks for advice. Ultimately, the three of them decide to scout ahead while the rest of the Vikings make camp near the boats. Something like that. No, I have not put a sample of my writing into Muse because that's only for the chapter generator. I could put it in somewhere else, but I actually find that it's usually close enough to my style. I don't have a particularly unique style, I would say, nor do I really want to have one. I'm in the same camp as Brandon Sanderson that I think style can sometimes interfere Like if you have a too unique of a style, it can interfere with the story. So I prioritize story over style. Push the run bellow. Let's see, through shoulder with a run prow slowly inch by inch. Still firmer. A doubled over panting is slick with mud, but their expressions remained confident. What could cause such desolation as this? It was as though this island had risen from the depths of the sea, North Sea. Hang on, my wife's trying to contact me. Okay. Remember to keep things respectful in the comments, guys. I'm not monitoring it as closely as I can. But, yeah, just keep things respectful. There are many, many, many different ways to write with or without AI. All right. Where was I? Okay. As he scanned, he caught sight of a lone figure who had distanced himself from the rest of his crew. The man wore a dark cloak and hood, and he stood turned away from Ragnar, looking further inland at the gentle, we'll say, sloping rise of the muddy terrain. Even hooded, the man was unmistakable. There we go. All right. Sorry, I keep looking back at the chat, and I probably shouldn't because it slows me down here. And I know you guys want to see the writing, so I'm going to actually minimize this window for a second, so I'm not going to see anything in the chat until I open it back up again. That's not like, don't take it as a slight. I'm just trying to focus. So all right. Sten, Ragnar called as they neared. What does your sight make of this? Sten's eye called to the seer as they neared. What does your sight make of this? Sten's eyes gleamed with an intensity that belied his years. Potentially that, well, that was completely normal for him. As if listening for something on the wind. I don't like words like laden. Each word carefully chosen. The storm brought it here, and it may not be the last of its kind. Scout ahead. All right, that's good. We're at 1,100 words here. So, and I think we're getting close to the end of the chapter. We still have to find the stone and sketch the runes. So I think we didn't make a ton of progress today. That's partially because we got off to a slow start. But I'm going to finish off this chapter and then I'll take some questions, and then hopefully next time I'll sort of challenge myself to see how many chapters I can get done in one go. But as you can see, this is not a one and done, like, oh, AI writes everything for me. I am very carefully going through and guiding this thing. But it is a different process for sure than actual writing. And I say actual writing just for lack of a better term, because I do still consider this a writing process. And clearly I'm writing lots of words, even if I'm not writing all of them. It is more akin to editing, I suppose. But all right, let me continue. Ragnar, Thornbjorn, and the seer make their way up the muddy incline, heading inland to see if they can find anything. Describe the island itself, which gives Ragnar a bad feeling that he can't place. There we go. Still, others muttering of ill omens, testing their footing on the slick ground. Some of this is a little over dramatic for my taste. and I am editing out a bunch of it, but some of it I actually do think is appropriate for this type of book because these are Vikings that we're talking about. There's a certain archaic language that I think is okay to leave in. So like clung to their leg, and it's also cosmic horror, so a little bit of floweriness is expected. Clung to their legs like the grasping hands of the drowned. Normally I would say that's way too much, but actually in the context of this, I think it's fine. It was the same feeling he had nursed since the start of the storm. Here, it was as if the island itself watched them with dark impatience. Close screen studying the landscape with solemn intentness and chill. See, I am editing out quite a bit of these little phrases here and there. Again, I usually prefer more simplistic prose. Reaching higher ground, they paused to survey the island spread out before them in a barren, desolate, an expanse of mud and decay unlike it. That was no different from what they had seen before. Save for one thing. Near its center stood near the island's center stood a solitary hill crowned by what Ragnar could now see was a standing stone. Ragnar tells them to continue. He realizes that the standing stone must have some significance, as it is the only thing on this island besides mud and filth. As they approach, describe and can see it clearer. Describe the stone as being tall, oblong, and would have looked natural except for the fact that there were no other stones anywhere near, and it is covered in runes that Ragnar does not understand. Oops. In his mind, Ragnar saw again those writing symbols. No, that's not part of the story. Almost twice a man. Strange oblong shape that would have seemed like any other stone. But for a singular presence in this bleak expanse, a solitary sentinel amidst the mud and ruin. Glyphs twisted and flowed across its surface. Unfamiliar runes. Unlike any Ragnar had seen, these were not runes of the gods. At least, not the gods he knew. Yeah. Oh, so I'd written this phrase here saying, at least not the gods he knew, and now I didn't see this bit of dialogue here from Sten saying these are not the gods we know. So I don't want that kind of a repetition. So I just need to decide which one. Yeah, we'll just take off this one. Sten's whisper. All right, so I've realized something. In the outline, Ragnar's supposed to take a sheet of paper and do like a rubbing. But that's not really... This is the sort of thing that you sort of realize when you get into the flow state and you start thinking about things logically. Is like, you're like, oh, why would he have a piece of paper on him? First of all, it would have been rare in that time to begin with. Second of all, they've just been in a storm. Everything's going to be soaked through. I think it would be more likely that Sten would have something because he's a seer. He'd likely have some kind of something or other to write things down with. He's an educated man. So I'm going to change the outline so that this guy has a journal or something like that. And he pulls it out and starts manually copying down the runes that he sees. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Sten pulls out his journal, something Ragnar knows the seer keeps on him at all times. Miraculously, we're going to just improve on the mysticism around this guy. It seems as though it has been completely sheltered from the storm. Ragnar knows the seer has a lot more to him than meets the eye, but Ragnar had recruited Sten because all reports indicated he was the most accurate seer. in all the Viking clans. So just giving us a little backstory on Sten there. As he reached into his cloak and drew a small journal. Ragnar recognized it at once. The seer kept it always at his side. To Ragnar's surprise, the book was untouched by the storm. A mystery among many, though, one he had come to expect of Sten. The seer scribbled furiously, his hand moving with the speed that belied it, and copying down the runes etched on, well, let's say, runes etched on the stone. Yep. He looked at let's just remove that. Whoops. I don't know who admitted the words came reluctantly, but here they were honest. I like that. Sten closed his journal with a finality that hung the air. With a snap. Snap as he finished transcribing the runes. It is old, he said slowly, older than us all. Leaving eyes, Ragnar's it watches. I don't know if we need that. Well, actually, no, that works. Ragnar asks, watches. What? And why? Before reaching out to touch the standing stone. In an instant, he is aware of a giant eye, seen only in his mind's eye, but real nonetheless. It is as if the eye opens and turns toward him, aware of his presence. Come on. He reached out, his fingers brushing the cold surface of the standing stone. Suspended. I'm gonna draw out this moment just a little bit more. Suspended in front of him, closer and closer to the standing stone. At last, his fingers brushed the cold surface. Of the wet stone. Let's see, what kind of stone is this? Let's say granite. Let's say granite. Granite. His tracing the outline of the nearest rune. In an instant, his vision filled with darkness so vast it seemed to swallow him whole. Good. He was aware of a giant eye, the eye of something immense and unfathomable, opening in the black expanse. It turned toward him, fixing on his mind with a sentience that froze his bones. It was aware, awake, and its gaze was all-consuming. Ragnar gasped, tearing his hand away as if burned. The world around him snapped back into focus. The stone, the mud, the island stretching endlessly beneath a heavy sky. His heart thundered his chest like a battle drum. See, that was pretty good. That aside and said, "What happened?" he asked. "Oh, Ragnar caught his breath, struggling to find words for what could not be spoken. He looked to Sten, who watched him with an understanding that chilled him further. The runes managed to there's power in them. Slowly confirm what they are. Ragnar feared power that sees beyond this place. He said there was gravity. There was something eager in the seer's voice. It was clear he did not share the same fears that Ragnar felt. That made even Ragnar, the greatest of Vikings, quiver. Ragnar demands that Sten give him the journal so he can look at the runes as they travel back to the camp. As they walk, he sees the runes on the pages, and it almost seems to him like they are moving. The chapter ends with the phrase, "What were they getting themselves into?" Ragnar's outstretched hand did not falter. He extended his hand, palm up toward Sten. Ragnar opened the journal and began to study the freshly inked runes. An unfamiliar sensation crept over him as he traced them with his eye, like whispers on the parchment. We returned to camp. Did not respond. I'll say responded only in silence. They descended the hill faster than they had climbed at urgency. Slipping and sliding down the muddy passages. It didn't end with the with what I asked it to, but it's also not quite done with the beat. So I'm going to run this again. Just have it do a little bit more here. Oh, yeah. Nice. If the right on the page, unnatural shapes. All right. I think that's it. That is our full chapter. Ends up being almost 2,400 words. I'm going to take that. We'll go into Atticus. Just copy it here into Atticus. I will do another editing pass because sometimes there's stuff that I miss. Maybe we'll go into AutoCrit or ProWriting 8 or something for that. But this is good. I'm happy with this. So next time we will get into chapter 2. And I think next time what I want to try and do is challenge myself to see how much I can do in one live in like an hour. Because I want to get a word count. What's my per hour word count that I can do. So I'm going to do that next week. And probably won't get through the whole thing. Almost certainly won't get through the whole thing. So maybe a few more, 2 or 3 more sessions of this before this thing is actually fully finished. And as I've mentioned last week, we are expecting a baby here in the next few weeks, less than 4 weeks. And so I will continue doing these live streams every Friday until I can't, until the baby gets here, at which point there will be a break, and I'll get back to it later. But I am only going to work on this particular project in these live streams. So the entire thing, all the way through to publication, will be done here live. So that'll be fun. Okay. I'm gonna spare a few minutes for questions here. We're already over my typical hour and a half time, but let me go ahead and go through some of these. I know there's a lot of discussion about the nature of AI writing and whether it is actually writing. All right. Do. All right, so Grim Plays asks, so you're using this now instead of Novel Crafter? Practically speaking, yes. I still use Novel Crafter for other things. I won't get into all the subtle nuances of it. And the only reason is because of the Muse model, which I do consider to be the best one. It has little quirks of language and things that are just better. It is better for some genres than others. I find contemporary novels and if you're doing not safe for work stuff, like erotica, it is hands down the best. Like not even close. So yeah, that is. I am currently using it now. That could change in a moment, though, with just the nature of AI and the way AI works. But this is my workflow for now. Okay, does Sudowrite support French? It's important to make a distinction between what Sudowrite supports and what the large language model supports. The language has more to do with the model you are using. Some models, most models, can do other languages. Muse is specifically a model that Sudowrite uses that is only tailored for English. And so it does not work for other languages. But Sudowrite is a wrapper tool that uses multiple models. So if you're not using Muse, you can use a different, like I could use Claude in here. And if I were using Claude, I could do it in French. But it would be a different model, if that makes sense. Is quick chat helpful before using Muse? Not really. Yeah, Jason, Muse can be a runaway train. Chapter Gen took a whole short story, made a very large novella. Yeah, this is why I do it a piece at a time. I do think the quality of the prose is better than any other AI model. But because of its nature to run away with things, I find it better to go in 250 word chunks, sometimes 500 word chunks. But even then, I find it, if I do 500 word chunks, very often I'm not using a good portion of that. You know what genre you're writing it in? Is it enough to be a short story, a novella, a whole novel, or a series of books? So this is a novella. It will be part of a trilogy of novellas that are going to be kind of preludes to some other series that I have. I'm even debating whether this will be published. Well, no, I'm not. It will be. But it's more of a prelude to something else than anything. But it's heavily influenced by cosmic horror. There's a big cosmic horror element to it, mixed with Vikings, which I think is pretty cool. The others in the series will be totally different stories at totally different times, but thematically related. And then I have a whole bunch of other things. I just published a short novella that is a retelling of a Lovecraft short story that will be kind of related to this. And you can actually find that on my Amazon account and stuff. Okay, Al-Anomaly. Let's get into this. She asks, can I ask all of you why you prefer to use AI for stories? I want to reiterate that this is a genuine question. And then later she says, I love writing, and I'm sure like many of us have been doing it since I was a kid. I love prose and honing my voice. I love words and forming sentences. Probably why I have a hard time with this. I agree. That is probably why you have a hard time with this. And that's because you get joy out of the words. Okay. And so I want to emphasize this. If you get joy out of crafting the words, then writing with AI is probably not for you. You can use it for other things, of course, brainstorming, outlining, editing, improving, finding things to fix, all of that. AI is not meant to be used for everything, I feel. But there are a lot of people. So you say something, you say, like, I'm sure like many of us have been doing it since I was a kid. There are many authors I know who have not been doing this since they were a kid. In fact, I would say most of the people that come to me have not been doing this since they were a kid. I would say even myself, while I have been doing this since I was a kid, I wasn't actually writing a lot of prose. I was coming up with the stories and the plots, and that's why that part is my favorite. And even when I was a kid, I actually didn't want to be a writer. I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I was more interested in the kind of high-level storytelling rather than the sentence-by-sentence level storytelling. And it sounds to me like you're more interested in the latter, and you get more joy from that. In which case, do you. That's great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. This is just another way of doing it for people who are not like you, if that makes sense, who maybe haven't been writing words since they were a kid. Who might have, and I have to be careful with this, who maybe they're on the spectrum or have some other block that has kept them from even trying in the past. And I say I have to be careful with that because there are certainly plenty of people on the spectrum who are amazing writers and who can do it. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I do get a lot of people coming to me on this channel who are neurodivergent in some way, and who tell me that they have never been able to write before, but they've always wanted to, and this is what has made it possible for them. So I think that's amazing. I think we need to understand that the author sphere is diverse and should be diverse, and that there is not one way that is better than another. Just because even in the AI world, people use AI in vastly different ways. Like my process that I'm showing you here is just my process. There are so many other ways to do it. People who will spend more time on the world building and the characters and everything, people who spend less time on those things. People who don't use it for prose at all. They just use it for other things. There's such a diversity, and I am not saying that any one way is the only way. And so I just want to make that clear, and I hope that's a helpful perspective. I think we're not saying you should do it, but I am going to say we should not criticize those who do, because they might have a good reason for it. They might not be like you. Okay. All right. Yeah, a couple of people saying that it's just a tool. I agree. It is a tool. It is a powerful tool, though. I'll give it that. It's someone here says it's just like pen and paper. I would not say it's just like pen and paper. It is a massively more helpful tool than pen and paper, but it is a tool. And there will be a time in the future where people look back at where we are now and they will think of what we have now, as archaic. And they'll probably look at what people did before that, typewriters and everything, and just wonder like how they got anything done. Let's see. Anomaly says, I think for me, AI generating the prose and then me editing it for my voice perfectly would feel more work for me. But like I said, me personally, yeah, I could see that. If you're a person that really loves that part of the process, it probably would end up being more work for you. For someone who just kind of wants a simplistic prose, I think it's much faster for me this way. The only kind of editing that I do is if it makes a chronological error, or there's usually a lot of just trimming. AI has a tendency to throw too much floweriness and extra clauses and phrases in there that isn't necessary. Gumbo says, so Sudowrite following your outline, mostly, yeah. I mean, we only did one chapter, but it had that context of the chapter, and it followed me mostly okay. Anomaly says, I think good voice / style can absolutely elevate a book. It can. When not done well, it can definitely be distracting. I also think some people like leaner prose, as you said about Sanderson. Yeah, so yeah, I think I like Sanderson's prose. I know some people don't. I think it's because it's simple. It is not, his focus is not on the prose. It's on the story, the plot, the characters. And I think for him, prose is meant to be a window through which you're able to view these things that happened in this alternate reality. Other people view prose as part of the end product. And I agree, there are times it can be done well. Stephen King, I think, is a master of it. His prose is really interesting and it fits his genre. And is kind of, I would call it unique. A lot of literary books focus heavily on the prose. I think there's a lot of literary wannabes that focus on the prose and they don't do it well. Also comedy, if you write a comedic genre, tone is very important for that, or style. Voice is really important for comedic tone. So something like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Obviously voice is important for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But I think for what I write for fantasy, I agree with Sanderson. I'm trying to create a window through which people can see this world. And if I spend too much time on the prose trying to really enhance the voice, or to have a unique voice that's almost like smudges on the window, I would rather it be clean. Whatever is necessary to really get the point across and sort of immerse yourself in that world. So for your outline, hang on. Whoop, just lost it. So for your outline, did you wind up breaking it down into beats, which you're using in the guided write, and then fleshing it out further? So I was coming up with those beats on the spot. I did not use AI to convert my outline into beats. The reason for that is because, as I said earlier, I like the flow state of writing, and doing it one little beat at a time and coming up with the beat on the spot is much more like the actual act of writing than any other AI writing process I've come across. Because I'm not only, I don't know, it feels like I am immersed in the scene and seeing it happen as I'm going. And as such, sometimes the beats change. If I wanted to stick to the rigid beats, like I couldn't do that if I had pre-written the beats all at once. So I do have to kind of feed it in just one little bit at a time, because it often evolves. And as I'm sort of deeper in the scene, if I'm being immersed in the scene, there are things that come out, like little moments, like that moment where I realized we needed to get Sten involved. He's not in the outline at all. He wouldn't have been in any beats that I had used AI to generate, but I realized Sten needed to be involved right there from the very beginning. And so I brought him into the beats as I was writing them. That's the sort of thing that you wouldn't get unless you're sort of immersed in the story. And that's why I like to write this way. But again, this is just the way I do it. It's not necessarily the way you would do it. Is the Q&A tonight still on? Yes. So there's a free group. I do a monthly Q&A in there. And it is happening later today. A couple of hours, actually. So if anyone wants to join the free group right now and get in on that monthly Q&A, the link is down below. Yeah, this is Sudowrite that we're using, Fred. Anomaly is not a disruption at all. In fact, I love it when people like yourself come into these conversations who are asking genuine questions and not demonizing us. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for being here. We love it when people come in here and have civil yet challenging conversations. It's the only way we can have a come to any kind of consensus. This person says, I am neurodivergent and have written all my life, but it's always been a struggle and having to wait for the perfect moment, and this helps me to be able to work when I'm not having a perfect moment. I could see the filmmaker aspect in you and how you use AI. That's really interesting, actually. I think my husband is similar to you in that. Yeah. Yes, thank you, I can't pronounce your name sometimes. Anomaly. Thank you. I really do appreciate you being here. She says, I worry for the writer community if we don't, so I think having these conversations are really important right now. I worry for the writer community if we don't and are just constantly at war. 100% agree. If we could bring more people like yourself in and helping out, that would be great. But yeah, the filmmaker thing, that's definitely much more in my personality. And in fact, while I do write books myself, I write some short stories even without AI now, just as practice. And I write with AI and I work with ghostwriters because I think more in terms of whole universes instead of individual books or book series. Because that's just the way I think. I think big. And AI is one of those things. This is something I say a lot, that we shouldn't be too concerned about AI replacing us. Anytime a new technology comes around, we always think of how we can use it to do the stuff we were already doing. Only later do we realize that we can use those things to actually do even more. And so my advice to people is not to think about AI as what can it do that replaces what I did. Instead, think of it as, because that's like a fixed mindset, right? Think of it from a more growth mindset perspective where we're thinking, what can we do in the future that we could have never have done before AI was here? That's what excites me. And that's kind of what I push towards. So for me, I'm building a big publishing business right now, using between the stuff that I write and the stuff that AI writes, and the stuff, well, I should say the stuff that I write with AI and the stuff that I commission out to some ghostwriters, putting out quite a bit of content. And I haven't spent the last couple of years doing any kind of marketing. That is going to be changing here in the near future, and we're going to really pump this sucker up and see what we can do. But I see creating a successful publishing business as step one. Okay. There's a lot more potential coming in the future, and we'll see what that looks like. So I think that's a good place to end on. And I really appreciate you all being here. Thank you, Anomaly, for putting in your perspective and letting us have a civil conversation about it. I hope this has helped for both you and for others who are listening in. So thank you all for being here, and I will see you next week, unless the baby comes early, in which case you will not see me for some time. All right, I'll see you guys.